we have Jeromie Whalen running for the first congressional district. Jeremy, I haven't been using Spotlight, so if you want to kick things off, Jeremy, if you want to just answer the question that I'm sure you've had to answer on many an interview now, tell us a little bit about who you are and why you're running.
Yeah, thank you. Well, thanks, Progressive Mass. Y'all rock. I've had a lot of support from you all, and you do amazing work. I apologize for my voice too. This was the Holyoke Road Race and Parade Day weekend, so we were out canvassing the streets of Holyoke yesterday, and I was running around as a leprechaun, and it was an amazing day. But to give you a little bit of information about myself. Grew up in Belchertown out in Western Massachusetts. And Belchertown was a small town and it was a pretty purple place. In fact, it was a kind of intersection between rural farm community and suburban sprawl. And so I've always found myself on the side of being kind of a progressive liberal, while at the same time, I am able to connect with a lot of individuals because it's hard to hate somebody when you know their first name and you know their parents and you play baseball together. And so I just have that instilled within me. And so I went off to UMass. I started working at or going to school, bachelor's degree at UMass. And at UMass, I started working at the paper. And the Daily Collegian taught me about thinking critically about our media and media literacy, something that's very important in today's day and age. And I think that as we continue to see new technologies like AI come out, we need to be really a champion of truths and facts. And I see us drifting further from that. After college, I started working in community media. In community media, I was able to help others tell their stories and lift up their voices, especially for vulnerable populations that weren't able to do so necessarily for themselves. And I also saw the hard work that went into municipal ongoings because I was the first in and last out of City Hall chambers in Northampton for years in school committee. And so I want to connect those dots between the municipal, state, and federal level. And I was actually looking right before this, doing my homework on some of the state initiatives you have. And a lot of the co-leads are from Western Massachusetts. And I have developed relationships with those individuals. And I want to continue to do that to connect those dots. And then I became a teacher. And for the last 11 years, I was a public school, high school teacher. And that really changes you and changes your perspective. Both of my parents were teachers as well. And it takes a tremendous amount of kind of public service and selflessness to do that job. And it was with that that I found myself in the classroom going in the next day after Trump was elected in 2016. And I was working in Northampton, a lot of LGBTQ plus students and a lot of Black and brown students and students of lower socioeconomic circumstances as well in our public schools. And I went in and they were scared, I could tell. And I said, listen, I just want to apologize on behalf of adults for framing the world like this, because this is not what I teach you, but we're going to get through this. And there was a kind of collective sigh in that. But in the back of my mind, I'm going, how the hell did we get here? And who allowed this to happen? And I was at the time in my master's and I was thinking about protecting my classroom and my family and my community. And I said, the powers that be are going to solve this. And how naive I was, because I was in that same situation in 2024. But now I'm a little older and now I'm at the tail end of my doctorate. But now, rather than the incompetencies we saw with the first administration and a revolving door of individuals, now we were seeing a concerted effort with Project 2025. And now we were seeing individuals that were around him, Stephen Miller and Pam Bondi's of the world, that will rubber stamp quite literally anything. And I went into that classroom, I gave that same speech, and crickets, shrugs their shoulders, because we've normalized this. And it was a scary moment because they were 6, 7, 8 years old when Trump was first elected. So now all of this has become desensitized and par for the course. And I said, I can't allow that to happen. And I went back to those questions. How the hell did we get into this situation? Who allowed it to happen? Well, over that time period of teaching, I was bouncing around from Massachusetts Congressional District 1 to Congressional District 2. And Mass 2 was
And
Jim
just quickly,
McGovern.
because we have a question, if you can wrap
Yeah,
it up
yeah,
in the
yeah.
next 30 seconds.
So all that to say, I think that what I bring to the table is a progressive platform in a new age of messaging and a new strategy of politics that really gets people involved in participating in our democracy, and we're going to continue to do so.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So I'm gonna ask the next question. I'll tag in a few other kind of questioners throughout the whole interview. Next one, you've touched on this a bit. Do you consider yourself progressive? And if so, how would you define the word progressive?
Yeah, I actually have a term progressive. I do consider myself progressive. It gets thrown out in as if it's a bad thing. I don't think it is at all. And progressive is practical. When we talk about things that is a progressive platform, we talk about single payer healthcare and universal healthcare. Well, guess what? That's practical because every other developed country has this. And we are the outliers in America for not. And so when we think about these progressive platforms and think about politics, we often get labeled because, to be honest, the Democratic Party sucks at messaging. We get labeled as radicals, but progressive is the things that we need for a functioning society.
Great. I'm gonna bring up Noah to ask our next question.
Love the background, Noah.
Noah.
Thank you. I'm really outside, everyone. Um, so it's nice. It's nice to meet you, Jeremy. Um, don't distract me. I'm trying to focus. Um, it's nice to meet you, Jeremy. Um, do you support the goal of abolishing ICE? And if so, what does that mean to you in practice?
Can I say a swear, Jonathan?
That's on you. It's your call.
Fuck ICE, abolish ICE, and here's why. When we say abolish ICE, it doesn't mean that we have open borders. It means we have strong national security, but it means fast and efficient and humane ways of creating paths to citizenship in this country. But when we think about the recent history, because we haven't had ICE we've only had it for a couple of decades, and we certainly haven't had it in this rendition. And so when we say abolish ICE, it's both thinking about dismantling it from a legislative standpoint, but it's also the ideology that in the philosophy of we rather have the thugs in mass disappearing from our streets who are murdering American citizens than our friends and family and neighbors. And so when people shy away from saying abolish ICE or thinking about this, why I kind of scream that from the rooftops is because I'm out at the protests. For instance, Juan David, he was a individual at Springfield. His wife was taken by ICE. He had to show up every single week. He cried in my arms at a protest. Last time he went to the Burlington facility, he got shackled up and then he got deported. And he was a contributing member to our society. So when we say that, abolish ICE, and I will stand on 10 toes on that.
A quick follow-up question for you, Jeremy. At our annual meeting this January, Representative Moulton came out in support of accountability and even charging ICE agents for actions they've taken during this administration. Quickly, because we got more questions, but would you support accountability measures for illegal actions taken while someone has worked within ICE, basically?
Absolutely. That idea of qualified immunity in these cases is leading to a lack of accountability for, like I said, murdering of American citizens in our streets. And just as much as we need to hold them accountable, we need to use that and set that precedence to say that we will prosecute individuals that are breaking the laws in this situation.
Okay, I'm going to bring myself back on. Okay, so over the past few decades, we've seen in the US an increasing concentration of corporate power, whether it's through monopolies, kind of mergers, et cetera, as well as growing economic inequality, both wealth inequality, income inequality. Uh, Kind of, if elected, what steps would you advocate for in order to rein in corporate power and reduce economic inequality in the district and across the country?
Yeah, unfortunately, we know this all too well in Massachusetts Congressional District 1. My opponent is percentage-wise the number one recipient of corporate money in all of Congress. 75% of his money comes from corporate PACs. And we see what happens as a result. You have a lack of visibility, accountability, and to be quite honest, caring. So how do we rein that in? Well, when we think about Citizens United, a concerted effort to overturn Citizens United, that's a bit difficult because we would need a second amendment to the Constitution. Do you know how you skip all of that? You elect leaders that say no to that corporate money. And that's what we've been doing from the get-go, grassroots all the way through. The other things when we talk about corporations, offshore money is a huge problem. We're not just talking about Cayman Islands, we're talking about places like Ireland. And the places that money goes outside of our shores, we need to reel that back in. We need to create a tax system in this country that is making sure that corporations and billionaires are not skirting their fair share of taxes. So that's also surtaxes on the ultra wealthy. Bernie Sanders just came out with a plan, top thousand people in this country. If you tax them 5%, that's $4.4 trillion over a decade. That's the kind of greed we're talking about. So that shifts the economic relief to the working and middle class, and that's how we get our country back on track.
Okay. Sorry, this is telling me I need to unmute, but I'm the host. In terms of things that have already nice. In terms of other things that have had like terrible trajectories over the past few decades, climate crisis. What would be your top priorities for addressing the climate crisis and transitioning the U.S. away from fossil fuels?
Yeah, so on our website, we actually put it as create jobs and save planet, because facts of the matter is Ed Markey right here in Massachusetts, father of the Green New Deal. My opponent was the one individual from the Massachusetts delegation to not sign on to the Green New Deal. The Green New Deal, well, if you don't have just the incentive of saving the one precious resource that we have, this planet Earth, well, we can create union jobs and spur economic development, especially in a time where economic circumstances are hard for people. And with that, it creates an infrastructure that alleviates utility bills, for instance. So when we talk about solar, we talk about wind. When the technology gets there, I think that we're getting very close with battery storage. All of these cleaner energies are actually creating infrastructure, creating jobs, and creating opportunities for us to be working within our communities and saving money at the same time. Other
Okay.
things as well, just I'm going to tack on there too, I forgot. Make polluters pay, hold corporations accountable when they pollute. And one of them, something that I got from a youth listening session, curriculum development and climate literacy education. So educating our youth on what the actual facts are, especially when the Trump administration is trying to deny scientific evidence.
Okay, Max, I'm going to tag you in next.
Awesome. I'm happy to hear that you've done youth listening sessions as a youth, because that is so rare. But my question is, in light of discriminatory anti-trans legislation on both the state and federal level, would you fight for trans people, especially trans youth, who are, from my experience, one of the most vulnerable populations in the states right now, in Congress? And if so, how would you do it?
Yeah, thank you, Max. Thank you for your perspective. We have a lot of young individuals working on this campaign, a lot of LGBTQI plus people working on this campaign. That informs me as a white dude, gonna be honest, but it's also the time in the classroom that I've experienced in informing myself. I also used to work at the Queer Youth Leadership Awards. I used to be the producer of it out in Santa Cruz, California. Hundreds of individuals, trans individuals, queer individuals that I've interviewed over the time, and what that's shown me is the amount of compassion and kindness that they have, and the hostilities that they get from from the federal government and otherwise. And so we need to ensure that individuals have gender affirming healthcare. We need to protect gay marriage, which is crazy to me that when we think about things, Massachusetts being a pioneer of all this, something that could be under attack coming down the pipeline. Transgender Bill of Rights as well. Things that are going to enshrine and codify law protections in law for individuals and ensure their right to exist. And I think that what we do as a campaign too, outside of the legislation, it's also the inclusion and acceptance in the culture. And that is super important too. And that's part of our new age messaging, where it doesn't feel it doesn't feel awkward. It doesn't feel forced. We're including people in our campaign and advocating for them all the way through.
Ziva, I'm going to tag you in next.
Hi. Hey Jeremy, how you doing?
Hi, nice to see you again.
I'm turning to foreign policy, and my first question is about the current war against Iran. Do you support continuing the war? Do you believe the U.S. should move to end it? And would you stop funding the war? And what do you think should happen next? Would you support lifting or reducing sanctions as part of a negotiated truce? So
Yeah,
it's
so
funding and what should happen next.
no funding. Shouldn't have ever gotten into this war. To give you a reference, our rural schools in Massachusetts are underfunded by $60 million a year. One Hellfire missile could fund our schools for 2 years, our rural schools. That's what we're talking about. Complete waste of and misdirected prioritization of things. And on top of that, those schools that aren't funded, we're dropping Hellfire missiles on elementary schools. That's disgusting. So it's prioritization of our money, defunding this entire war, getting away from the idea of a military industrial complex in general, and going to diplomacy. Diplomacy really matters, and working with institutions like the UN to, when it comes to sanctions, when it comes to all these things, we should be working as a contingent of unite in a united front with our allies rather than creating hostilities amongst them, begging for their help, and then saying we don't need their help. And that's not how you win the hearts and minds. We could also talk about how we defunded USAID to do this. And so all that to say, no war, prioritize infrastructure and investments here in our own in the United States, and think diplomatically about sanctions and other things in a united front with other countries.
Thanks. Sticking with the Middle East,
Yeah.
do you believe that Israel's actions in Gaza and the West Bank constitute genocide? And if so, what actions would you vote for? Specifically, would you vote to end future appropriations that include funding for offensive or defensive weapons to the state of Israel?
Yeah, it's a genocide. And I can say that, and I have said that from the beginning. It's clear cut evidence. You see the media, you see the pictures, you see what is happening. My opponent won't say that because he takes $138,000 in APAC money. And that's another problem with the entire system. I would say also defund any military appropriation of money that goes to Israel. When we talk about defensive money, it's hard because if you give defensive money, say you're going to create an avenue for other pots of money to shift over to offensive. So everything needs to be scrutinized when it comes to aid to Israel. It's a travesty. That this is the situation that we're in, but we really need to be scrutinizing all funding, both offensive and defensive, when it comes to the situation that is being created, and de-escalating everything, because we see the offensive happening, and again going back and creating diplomatic avenues so we can talk about this on a united front.
Thanks, John. I'll turn it back to you. We have the answer to the defense budget in the questionnaire.
Okay, thank you. So obviously you're running against the incumbent. Congressman Neal has been in office for quite a while, and in recent elections has been able to defeat, often quite handily, past challengers. What is your approach in this campaign to help succeed where prior challengers to Neal have failed, particularly in getting voters who have repeatedly voted for the incumbent to decide in this election that this time that they shouldn't?
Yeah, so I think that I'm a different candidate and it's a different time than previous challengers. I think that what we are doing is we're harnessing the the underlying frustrations that have translated into mobility in the streets. We're going to be going to 10 no kings, for instance. We were at 6 before that, at the prior two, and we just get out and about. And what do you do when you do that? When you're out, when you're visible, when you're in the community, you create authentic connections and relationships. And that is with a variety of different people, everybody from city councilors and school committee members to grassroots organizations that have endorsed us, to just regular old folks that are just said enough is enough and helping come knock doors. And so we've created a true grassroots campaign here. And I'm very proud of my team. I'm very proud of what we've accomplished so far. I'm going to be honest, instead of locking myself, I was told by a consultant to lock myself in a room and not and do call time for 8 to 10 hours a day and not come out until spring. And we said that that's not representation. We are going to go out to events and we're going to create this. A no-name teacher, I'm going to be honest, a no-name teacher coming in with no political connections. That's an extreme uphill battle, but we have made tremendous gains because we're out and we're visible and we're present. And the people, when I raised my hand and I said, let's do this, hundreds of other people did just the same. And when we go knock doors in a snowstorm and bring out 60 people deep, that's saying something. And this is, 9 months before the actual election. So we're taking that and momentum and we're rolling it into something really special here.
Okay, and for a final question, so obviously here, like we're talking about our own endorsement process with Progressive Mass. How do you, as an individual and as a possible future kind of politician, decide about when and whom to endorse in race? What do you look yourself when evaluating candidates?
Yeah, what I look for is are you putting in the work and how authentic are you doing so? I'll be honest, when I look at endorsements, sometimes the process is a little daunting. What I ask is, what does that relationship entail? If that relationship entails a true collaboration, if Progressive Mass, when we get into a relationship, I am looking out for Progressive Mass and Progressive Mass is looking out for me. And we align on basically every single thing, to be honest. I mean, go look at the questionnaire. But when it comes to endorsement, that is a relationship. And that is something that I hold sacred. And I think that the people that work really hard in order to do so, and the organizations like Progressive Mass, there's a kind of symbiotic relationship that's created. And yeah, that's that grassroots component of it, coming out, knocking doors, doing postcards, those small donations, all that stuff. And then also being in tune and coming to events that Progressive Mass has and being there in a true champion of the cause. And we already have that overlap. That's always going to be there, whether we have an endorsement or not. But it's how we utilize that and strategize together that really makes it worth it.
Okay. So that's all for our questions. Can I get a round of Zoom applause for Jeremy before we then kind of round this one on out and go to our next interview? So
Thanks, everybody.